What is disciple? What is a disciple? We're going to be talking about that today. There was so much in that Bible passage, wasn't there? So much. Don't worry, we'll return to it in a couple of weeks. I'm going to pick out a few things today, but I want us to be thinking about this discipleship idea. What does it mean to be a disciple? One of the best definitions that I've heard is that of an apprentice. You may not have used that before. It may not be your experience to have been an apprentice. For many of us, our education is very, very different. Went to a classroom, we learnt some things, we got a degree, we began work. But what does an apprentice look like? Maybe it's something like that. Perhaps that's what comes to mind when you think maybe you love that. Maybe you don't have anything to do with that. A boss gets to shout at you and fire you. What does it mean to be an apprentice? Or maybe as you think about it, it's the magical, mysterious thing of an older mentor teaching you things might be right, they might be wrong, they could be good, they could be evil, whatever it could be. Or maybe it just comes to mind, it's quite an old idea. Is it very relevant now? But I just want to pause on this a little bit. I know it's black and white and it looks old and it's a sort of antiquated art form, the bootmaker, but it's kind of like this. Apprenticeship is not just learning about things, but it's whole of life learning to become something. And so that's what I want us to think about when we hear disciple of Jesus Christ, or becoming a disciple. It's not mysterious, out there, antiquated, old idea of apprenticeship, but it's a really good framework, a really good image, because if we stop to think about it, all of us are disciples of something or of someone. You can't avoid it. Being a disciple is part of being human. Who do you apprentice yourself to? Who do you give your life to that gives you meaning and it gives you purpose, shapes you, gives you joy in the good times, gives you comfort, gives you a mission and a purpose, transforms you? That's apprenticeship, right? There's a period of time where you grow, you learn more, you gain skills, your identity and who you are transformed from an apprentice to journeyman and on there to a worker. You become more and more like your master. You spend time with that person, but you know what? It could be a thing. All of us are disciples to someone or something. It might be an ideology, some political movement, and our meaning, our purpose, our drive, who we are, what we speak about passionately is that thing. It might be a person or a group of people that we just desire their approval. Each and every day we want to seek to become more like that person. Sometimes we can become disciples, and I just want us to think about this over the whole series, to Christianity. We can take on the ethics of Christianity. We can take a framework of belief and we can tick all the boxes. We can compare ourselves to other people and show how we know more, and we say, oh, I'm a pretty good disciple. But the Bible doesn't ever speak like that. When you apprentice yourself, when you become an apprentice, it is to Jesus. Or in the Bible, there are other rabbis who are around, and it's quite a difficult task to become a disciple of one of these rabbis, and then you spend time eating, traveling, working, learning together. But flash forward to us today, there's a bit of a danger that we've moved from becoming an apprentice to Jesus Christ and somehow become an apprentice to a collection of ideas that we call Christianity. I hope that ruffles your feathers a little bit, gets you to think. We won't solve all of those problems today, but across the whole series, I hope we can. Today, we're really just looking at the start of it, where Jesus does something quite clear. He calls his 12 disciples. So we know he had a bunch of other apprentices, other disciples, but he specifically calls 12. I want us to think about that today. What does he do when he calls his disciples? And first off, you might just be wondering to yourself, I wonder what a call looks like. What about us today? Do we get called by Jesus to become a disciple? Do we get called by him, for instance, to go into ministry? You hear that language, or to go and plant a church, or to go and do mission work somewhere overseas or in a regional. A call. What does that mean? What does that mean to be called? What do you know what? That would be a good discussion if you're in a growth group, to look at the nitty-gritty of how is that different from the 12 disciples to my own story? Just an encouragement there. Jesus uses this expression when he says, come to me or come follow me. There's a few places. So Mark 1:17, we've kind of referenced these before. I think they're up there. Mark 1:17, he says to a couple of fishermen, come follow me, I'll make you fishers of people. Matthew 11, he says, come unto me. Yep, I'll send you out to fish for people. A very strange idea. Let me just pause for a moment. Have you thought about that fishing metaphor? What does it mean to go and fish for people? He says, come follow me, and then you're going to go fish for people. Throw out a net. I've been thinking about it a little bit this week. This is really just an aside. Fishing for me is often one man with a fishing rod, time alone, no success. I'm just feeding them little, frozen prawns. I leave after an hour. But I remember when I lived overseas with a family who the dad had just grown up in this area. This was in Finland. There was thousands and thousands of lakes. And we took a boat and we went where the two lakes joined. And we sat in a boat and we had, I remember we got 40 earthworms out of the garden. And then we just fished with poles, not even a rig or anything, just a pole where you flick it in and flick it out. And we got 35 fish from that area. We lost 5 worms in the event. I thought, what is it about that idea? Well, I went with somebody who knew where the fish gathered. He had a simple technique that he had faithfully gone about for years. And I'm just trying to think about, is that kind of the metaphor of discipleship? Is that kind of what Jesus meant? I mean, it was more like they threw a net to an area and drew into a boat. But it's a strange expression. Come follow me and I'll make you fishers of people. In Matthew 11, he says, come and follow me, or come to me, come unto me. We've had that one before. Come and be an apprentice. Apprentice your life to me. But when Jesus calls his disciples, he doesn't just leave them alone. Here, he gives them something that is incredible. Typically, if a rabbi was to call you, he only really called the most academically elite people were able to come and spend time with him, and they would eat together, travel together, work together, and he would teach them, a small number. And yet what Jesus does, he goes to some rough fishermen, some rebels, some real outliers. A couple of guys had nothing charismatic or special about them. But he doesn't leave them alone. When he says, come and apprentice your life to me, he gives them authority, he gives them a mission, he gives them a plan. I'm just going to look at that today, and then we're going to work out, well, what does that look like for us here? So in the first few verses, he calls his disciples and he gives them authority. That's the first thing. He says to these 12, hey, in verse 1, I'm going to give you authority to drive out impure spirits, demons, and heal every disease and illness. You apprentice your life to me and you'll do the things that I have been doing. You're going to show people what my kingdom looks like. You're going to restore brokenness. So if there is some evil, some impurity, the dark spirits, you're going to kick them out. If there is this disease, you're going to have power over it. You're going to heal and restore brokenness, physical and spiritual. There's a holistic nature to it, so that people know you come from me. I have sent you. You are my apprentices. and sends out the 12. They do so under his authority, but he doesn't leave them alone. He gives them his authority. Now, do we have those same gifts today? Same kind of power in that way? Or was it specific for the 12? And we have different set of spiritual gifts? Was it something that perhaps you only see around the world when God himself is starting something, breaking through barriers, and something new is about to go in a country that maybe hasn't heard of him before? This is a good discussion to have in your growth groups. I'd like to know what you think about these gifts. But we know that he gives it particularly to the 12. And then Matthew gives us more detail than we need. And I find this really fascinating. He calls the disciples, they're not left alone. More than that, he knows them deeply and he sets something up for us. Which says, under my authority, there will be a unity of love that you've never seen before. It wouldn't occur in any other group of people. Here are the names of the 12, and here are their stories. Here are their contexts. Two of them are brothers. One, he's going to change his name from Simon. Jesus will change and call him Peter, meaning a rock. Another set of brothers, some quiet, unassuming guys. Thomas, who we know was a doubter, that was attached to his name later. Springing out at us is a couple of things. Judas, who would betray him. There's some foreshadowing. He called a man who would later betray him to death. But there's two other guys, Matthew the tax collector, Simon the zealot. You cannot get more opposite guys in this small band of apprentices who are given the authority of Jesus. They're sent out from Jesus to show what he is like. And one is a collaborator with the evil empire, the Romans, profiteering off it, collaborating. And another is a revolutionary, standing outside and willing to do anything. Perceivably, possibly, if they hadn't met Jesus, either of those would have betrayed the other to death. Matthew could have said, here's Simon the Zealot, he should be arrested and executed. Simon the Zealot, the only way we can overthrow is with the sword. Here's this collaborator, let's take his life. And yet they're labeled here, not only who they are, their context, their story, the very identity of their work, and they are unified in Jesus Christ. Because of him, they are both apprentices learning what it is to give their life to follow their rabbi under his authority. He's saying to them, show people what the kingdom looks like, do the things that I do. And I just want to pause for a moment and say, well, we are called to be disciples as well. And we are given an authority as well from Jesus. And we are called to do the things that he does to show others what the kingdom of heaven is like. As we get into the nitty-gritty, there might be some differences worth exploring, but at that level, when he calls us to apprentice ourselves to him, he's not saying, learn about me. He's saying, under my authority, do the things that show people that you come from me, that I have sent you, and I'll give you the authority. Well, then he calls disciples and he gives them a mission just a little bit later, verse 5 to 8. They're sent out from Jesus, and the first thing he says is, hey, don't do this and don't go here. Which seems a little counterintuitive because he's starting a movement, and surely he wants more and more people to be his disciples and for that to go out. But he gives them these instructions. Hey, don't go to the Gentiles, that's the non-Jews. Don't go to Samaritans, that's the kind of half mixed bloods. Just go to the lost people. Here's your focus, the lost sheep of Israel. And have this one simple message, verse 7, the kingdom of heaven has come near. Tell people that. Preach that, share that, teach that, and then show them what the kingdom of heaven looks like, that you are sent from me, heal those who are ill, raise the dead, cleanse those who have leprosy, drive out demons, and remember this, freely you have received, freely you give. What does that mean? That he's got a lot of power and he's given it to them, he's got a lot of authority, he's given it to them, yeah, but also he has a lot of love and a lot of mercy, and they've experienced that because two of them should be enemies and they're friends. They've got a lot of forgiveness. One of them will go to betray him. Another will doubt him. His closest disciple will flee in his time of need and abandon him and then reject him 3 different times. And yet he says, here's this power. Here's this, show people my kingdom. Tell them what it's like and show them what it's like as well. They need to see it. They need to experience it as well. I think it's the grace of Jesus Christ. What is it that's freely given? They've experienced all of these things, which is his grace, his free gift. They've been in his presence, and they say, show people that. Show them what it's like to be released from captivity to spiritual imprisonment. Show people what it's like to be released from captivity to an illness and a sickness and a life of poverty and a life outside of the spiritual because you're considered unclean. Bring them in. Let them know what my kingdom is like and have faith. Because from 9 to 15, there's just this picture of incredible faith. I'm going to send you out. I'm not going to sponsor you. I'll give you a mission. I'll give you authority. But go in faith. Don't even bring a second shirt. Do not even bring another pair of sneakers. I'm at the age now where I went to a podiatrist for the first time and they said to me, buy new shoes. Every year, buy new shoes. But if you're out on a mission and if you're traveling and if you're walking around and if you're going from town to town to town, he says, don't even have a second pair. A second tunic, bring no gold, bring no silver. Stay with somebody who will have you. A person of peace. It's an interesting phrase, isn't it? Just act in faith. I will put the right person there to look after you. You carry out my mission under my authority and then go again. I will look after you, my apprentices, as you go about my mission. Just have faith. Just trust me. Be bold. I think we are given a mission as well. And the call for us is to have bold faith, to have courage, to recognize the authority that Jesus has over all things and over all people. I was getting a coffee the other day and I was just waiting for it and I saw there was a girl who was reading the Bible in the cafe and I thought, I should go and chat to her about it. And then my coffee came and I had the list of things and I don't know if she was exploring or investigating. I don't know if she was getting ready to teach. I didn't know anything. I was like, what a missed opportunity. Maybe I'm still scared, a little bit afraid. But Jesus gives us a mission. He gives us authority. He says, hey, I'm with you. He gives us his grace. Generously, hey, you know my mercy. Show mercy to other people. You know my love. Show it to other people. You know the power that are in my words. Not just teach people, but show them what that looks like as well. The third thing that he does when Jesus calls his disciples is he gives them a plan. So he said, this is what I want you to do, where I want you to go. But then he says, this is how you are to go about it, from 16. And he paints a pretty tough picture. He says, hey, you know what? You're going to be like sheep among wolves. There'll be people who won't like what you're doing. And at this time, it might end up in being arrested and executed, flogged, handed over to the local authorities. Governors and kings will ask, what are you doing? Remember my authority, he says, above the kings, above the governors, above those in local council, above the religious leaders. Remember my authority. And also remember, I'm with you to the point, I'll give you the words to say, he says. In verse 20, it won't be you speaking. When you're put on the spot, it will be the Spirit of your Father speaking through you. It will be God's voice, God's word going out. He says this strange thing, be wise and innocent. Did you catch that part about being as wise as serpents but as innocent as doves in 16? Such a strange idea. I think it means conflict is going to come. Don't cause more. On one level, it says, don't be so naive to not expect some opposition. Yeah, you'll need to have courage. But also, don't be such a person that's always kicking the door down. Don't be who's looking for conflict, who thinks, oh, God's pleased with me because I'm arguing all the time. No, be wise, like a serpent. Read the room, think about it, but also be innocent. And that just means have your hands clean. Don't try to manipulate something. Don't call it strategy, but you're really trying to manipulate. No, your hands are clean, your heart is open, you're innocent, but you have to kind of be a bit smart about things. How you might go about things is when you see opposition, walk away. When you see a person of peace, spend time with them. When you see an opportunity that calls for courage, be courageous, be bold. Know that it's God's words that are speaking through you. We're called and we're given a plan and we know what it is. We've kind of seen from these disciples, these apprentices, what Jesus actually did when he went to the cross. We've seen what he actually achieved by dying in our place. We've seen his absolute authority over sin, over death, over the devil. We've seen a freely gift of love poured out for us, that we will be forgiven and we'll be called the children of God. And we can show that love freely to others. So my call to you, my conviction to you is do not be afraid. As we think about what it is to be apprentices, it is giving up something in order to gain something much better. It's leaving an old way in order to say, I'm going to give my whole of my life apprentice to Jesus Christ, to becoming more like him. And it takes some effort. Sometimes we stand back and we say, well, it is a free gift of God. Matt, you've just said that. But Jesus is never speaking against effort. He's speaking against earning. He's speaking against that time when you think, oh, I made it. God's pleased with me for the things that I have done. No, it's not your effort. You never earned it. But he saves us from a life of sin, of darkness, of death. But he saves us to something. Come and give me your life. Apprentice your life to me. Allow me to speak through you. Allow me to use you. Yes, even you. He uses some of the most unimpressive people in his band of brothers here to do powerful things, and they give up their life in his service. Do not be afraid. Be bold. Let me just pick out a couple of things to encourage you. 26, he says there is no need to be afraid of any opposition, of any conflict. I am with you. In 31, I'm jumping ahead. He says, do not be afraid. I know you. I love you. You are valuable to me. You are worth more than any sparrows, any little bird. I look after the little birds. How much more you? I am there with you. And he says something that's quite striking. As Mark read it, he said, don't be afraid of those who can kill your body. Don't be afraid of those who can execute you. But have a reverent fear for God, who could kill even the soul. And I think that's for us to pause and to think, oh, do we have a right kind of fear? The fear of others, is that outweighing the reverent fear that we have of God? But also, I just want us to think a little bit. It's kind of the flip side, that's the other side of the coin of understanding the power of God. That would mean, it doesn't say that here, but that would mean if you haven't apprenticed yourself to Jesus, if you aren't a disciple of his, then your destiny is hell. And that should make us weep. One of the things I did yesterday, I went for a little walk around Balmain, had some jobs to do, coffee to get, of course. Bumped into a few people, found out they'd moved house and all kinds of stuff. It was very, very fruitful. But in that walk, I just saw hundreds and hundreds of people pushing prams and walking their dogs and buying things in the markets, and people who, as far as I know, do not know Jesus Christ, do not know his offer, do not the free grace and the gift that he has. It was a sad walk by the end of it. I think it's a call for us to maybe think about Balmain, weep a little bit when we walk. But also understand this free offer in Matthew 16, which we'll get to a little bit later. This offer is for all people to become disciples, for anyone, for everyone. It's not as it was in the rabbinic times when it was the elite of the elite. The best students were called by disciples to go and follow the great masters. He says, anyone. He said, anyone, whoever comes to me, whoever you are, whatever you've done, whatever you've experienced. You might be a professional. You might be a school dropout. You might be somebody who's well respected. You might be someone who is an outlier, someone who's pushed away. You might be a fisherman. You might be somebody who is a dirty job. You might be someone who's high up in a sweet office. Anyone, whoever you are, come to me. Whoever. And whatever you've done, my offer is there. Jesus calls his disciples to apprentice with him. And that offer is for all people. And you know what? He deems to use us and our voices, but more than just our voices, our actions. Apprentices, one of the things we might use, they use their hands, right? And the call for us is not only our hands, but our heart and our heads, all of it. Whatever we have and whoever we are. Let's pray. We ask, Father, that you would help us to not be afraid, to not fear other people, to have a right fear of you, and that we would know what it is to be your disciples, Father. Not trapped, not stuck, but full of your spirit and your life, knowing your plan, excited by your mission, fluent in the good news, freely giving and handing out mercy and kindness and generosity and love and forgiveness to all those around so that they would see your kingdom and they would meet your Son, Jesus Christ, in whose name we pray. Amen.